The medical outpost Mercy's hand floated peacefully in the inky void of space, its white hull gleaming under the light of an unfamiliar sun. Located on the very edge of human-controlled space, it served as both a statement of humanity's benevolence and a practical necessity for the numerous mining and exploration crews working in the sector. Dr. Elaine Porter wiped sweat from her brow as she finished suturing a plasma burn on a miner's forearm. "There you go, Mr. Kovacs. Try not to stick your arm in any more reactor coolant tubes, The burly miner flexed his arm experimentally. "No promises, Doc. Those tubes don't fix themselves." A soft chime interrupted their banter. Dr. Porter came the artificial voice of the station's AI. "The supply ship from Earth will be docking in approximately 15 minutes. "Perfect timing," Porter replied. "We're running low on synthetic skin grafts after that explosion on Helios mining platform last week." That's when the first tremor shook the station. "What was that?" Kovacs asked, suddenly alert. "Meteor impact," Porter frowned, bringing up the external camera feeds on her tablet. "No, that wasn't. The second impact was much more violent, sending medical instruments clattering to the floor." The lights flickered ominously. "Attention all personnel." The AI's voice had lost its usual calm. "Unknown vessels approaching. Hostile intent detected. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not." The third blast tore through the station's primary hull. Alarms blared as emergency bulkheads slammed shut. The distant sound of escaping atmosphere hissed through the station. "We're a medical facility," Porter shouted at no one in particular as she helped Kovacs to his feet. "We're unarmed. We're protected under the Galactic Concord." Through the viewport, Porter caught her first glimpse of the attackers. Sleek, obsidian ships with angular protrusions that reminded her of insect carapaces. They moved with frightening precision, targeting the station's life support systems and communication arrays. "Vex'tar," Kovacs whispered, his face pale. "I've heard stories from the Outer Rim miners. Never thought they'd come this far into human space." Another explosion rocked the station. The lights went out completely before emergency backups bathed everything in an eerie red glow. "Dr. Porter," the AI's voice was now fragmented, digital glitches interrupting its speech. "I've managed to activate the quantum entanglement communicator. Earth Command is on the line. They're requesting status." Porter stumbled to the communication console, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "This is Dr. Elaine Porter, Chief Medical Officer of Outpost Mercy's Hand. We are under attack by what appear to be Vex'tar vessels. We have no defenses." "Repeat, we are a medical facility with no defensive capabilities. We have over 200 patients, including civilians and children. Request immediate assistance." The reply was immediate but broken by interference. "Copy, Mercy's Hand. Hold position. Assets being." The transmission cut off as another explosion tore through the station. Porter looked around at her medical bay, now transformed into a scene of chaos. Junior doctors treated the wounded as best they could. Nurses evacuated non-ambulatory patients toward the emergency shelters. Through it all, the relentless barrage continued. "Why?" Porter whispered, watching as a Vex'tar boarding craft attached itself to the station's main airlock. "Why attack healers?" Kovacs had found a maintenance wrench and gripped it tightly. "Because they're monsters, Doc. Simple as that." Porter shook her head, grabbing a sedative injector from a nearby tray. It wasn't much of a weapon, but it was something. "No," she said firmly. "Nothing sentient attacks without reason. There's something else going on here." The airlock door began to glow red as the Vex'tar cut through it. "Well," Kovacs said grimly, "I guess we'll get to ask them in person." As the door fell inward with a resounding clang, Porter's last conscious thought before the flashbang grenade detonated was that Earth would never let this stand. They had attacked healers, the most protected members of human society. The response would be swift and terrible. She had no idea just how right she was. Aboard the ETS Harbinger, docked at Earth's orbital defense platform, the klaxons blared. "Oh, for crying out loud," muttered Commander Jack Reaper. Harlow, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. "I've been trying to enjoy this synthetic meatloaf for 20 minutes now." The mess hall's intercom crackled. "Attention Angels of Death, report to briefing room immediately. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." Lieutenant Mira Scalpel Diaz rolled her eyes as she stood up. "Is it ever a drill? Just once I'd like to hear." "This is totally a drill. Take your time finishing your terrible food. You know." Tech Specialist Dex, Mainframe Okoro said thoughtfully, tapping his neural implant which glowed a soft blue at his temple. "Statistically speaking, if they never call drills, the efficiency of actual emergency response decreases by save it for someone who cares calculator." Harlow growled, but there was no real heat behind it. He'd served with Dex long enough to know the man's obsession with statistics was what kept them alive on more than one occasion. The trio made their way through the Harbinger's sleek corridors, other crew members pressing themselves against walls to let them pass. That's what happened when the Angels of Death were called to action. Everyone else got out of the way. They weren't the only ones reporting in. As they entered the briefing room, Harlow nodded to the other members of the elite unit. Weapons specialist Tara Boom Rodriguez was already cleaning her custom plasma rifle. Pilot Nikolai Ghost Petrov sat quietly in the corner, his eyes closed in what looked like meditation but was actually him interfacing with the ship's navigation systems through his neural implant. The final member of their team, Tactical Officer Quinn Switchblade Lee, was studying a holographic star map, already plotting potential engagement scenarios. "All right, Angels," Harlow announced, taking his place at the head of the table. "What poor bastards are we delivering to the afterlife today?" The door slid open, and Admiral Olivia Chen strode in, her face a mask of controlled fury. The Angels immediately snapped to attention. "At ease," Chen said, her voice tight. 16 hours ago, the medical outpost Mercy's Hand was attacked by Vex'tar forces. A murmur ran through the room. The Vex'tar were a relatively new threat, an insectoid species from the Outer Rim with technology that rivaled humanity's own. "A medical outpost?" Diaz asked, her usual sarcasm replaced by genuine confusion. "That's protected under every treaty in the galaxy. Even the Draconians respect medical neutrality." Chen nodded grimly. "Exactly. Which is why this cannot stand. We've received fragmented transmissions indicating the station has been boarded. Life support is failing. We have potentially hundreds of medical personnel and patients in danger." "With all due respect, Admiral," Harlow interjected, "why us? The Angels of Death aren't exactly known for our gentle touch. Wouldn't a standard rescue team be more appropriate?" Chen's eyes flashed. "Because, Commander, I don't want to rescue the doctors. I want to send a message. Nobody, and I mean nobody, attacks Earth's healers and lives to tell about it." The room fell silent. Even Dex stopped fidgeting with his datapad. "Besides," Chen continued, bringing up a holographic display of the Mercy's Hand, "we have reason to believe the Vex'tar aren't just attacking. They're taking prisoners. Specifically, they're targeting the Medical Research Division, the one working on that universal regenerative therapy," Quinn asked, leaning forward. "Precisely," Chen confirmed. "If the Vex'tar get their mandibles on that research, they could reverse engineer it into a bioweapon. We can't let that happen." Harlow studied the rotating hologram, already identifying entry points and defensive positions. "Time frame?" "You leave in 30 minutes, Chen replied. "The Harbinger is the only ship in the quadrant fast enough to get there before the station's life support fails completely." Diaz cracked her knuckles. "Well, looks like we're making a house call." Dex smiled awkwardly. "Actually, the correct medical terminology would be a consultation. A house call implies mainframe." Harlow cut him off. "Prep the tactical systems. I want every schematic of that station downloaded to our neural links before we hit lightspeed." "Already done, sir," Dex replied, tapping his temple. "I've also taken the liberty of analyzing the Vex'tar attack pattern. There's something odd about it." "Save it for the mission," Harlow ordered, standing up. "Angels, gear up. We've got doctors to save and bugs to squash." As they filed out of the briefing room, Diaz fell into step beside Harlow. "You know what I find hilarious about all this? What's that scalpel? They're sending the Angels of Death to save a bunch of healers. Talk about irony." Harlow's lips twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Yeah, well, sometimes the best way to save a life is to take a few." "Technically," Dex chimed in from behind them. "If we're comparing statistical outcomes of various intervention strategies, mainframe." The other two shouted in unison. "Right," Dex mumbled, his neural implant flickering as he returned to his calculations. "Shutting up now." As the Angels prepared for battle, the Harbinger's engines began to hum with power. Soon they would be tearing through space toward the beleaguered medical station, and heaven help anyone who stood in their way. The Harbinger cut through hyperspace like a scalpel through tissue, its advanced engines pushing the limits of what was theoretically possible. In the ship's tactical room, the Angels of Death gathered around a holographic display of Mercy's Hand. "All right, people," Harlow said, his voice all business. "We've got about 4 hours before we reach the target. Let's make sure we're not going in blind." Dex's fingers danced across his neural interface. "I've downloaded the station's complete schematics. It's your standard Mercy-class medical outpost. 7 decks, rotating HAB section for gravity, research labs in the zero-G core. Life support is problematic. They're down to emergency systems only. Any survivors? Diaz asked, her usually sarcastic tone now serious. Intermittent life signs throughout the station, Dex replied. Concentrated in the emergency shelters on Deck 4 and the surgical bay on Deck 2, but there's interference, probably from Vex'tar tech. Quinn studied the rotating hologram. Entry points. Main airlock is compromised, Dex said. That's where the Vex'tar breached. But there's a maintenance dock on the underside that might still be intact. Nikolai spoke up for the first time. I can get us in there. Tight fit for the shuttle, but I didn't earn the name Ghost for nothing. Good. Harlow nodded. Boom, what are we up against? Tara Rodriguez pulled up a different hologram, this one showing the insectoid Vex'tar in combat gear. Standard Vex'tar warriors. Exoskeleton provides natural armor equivalent to our light combat suits. They're stronger than humans, but slower. Their weapons are mainly plasma-based with some biological components we don't fully understand. Biological components. Diaz raised an eyebrow. Like what? They've been observed using some kind of acid projector, Rodriguez explained. And their ships have these weird organic-looking growths that seem to function as weapons systems. Great, Diaz muttered. Giant bugs with acid guns. Just what I always wanted to fight. Focus. People. Harlow cut in. Our primary objective is to rescue the medical personnel and patients. Secondary objective is to secure or destroy any sensitive research that might fall into Vex'tar hands. And the tertiary objective? Quinn asked, though everyone already knew the answer. Harlow's face hardened. Send a message. Nobody attacks Earth's healers. The tactical room fell silent for a moment. I still don't get it, Diaz said finally. Why would the Vex'tar attack a medical station? Even from a strategic standpoint, it makes no sense. There are juicier military targets in the sector. Dex cleared his throat. Actually, I've been analyzing the attack pattern, and I have a theory. Let's hear it, Harlow said. The Vex'tar didn't just attack randomly. They specifically targeted the research labs and data centers. They wanted something specific. The regenerative therapy research, Quinn suggested. Precisely, Dex nodded. But here's the interesting part. The Vex'tar have an unusual biology. Their cellular structure is fundamentally different from ours. What if they're afraid of this research? Afraid of medicine? Rodriguez scoffed. That's ridiculous. Not medicine in general, Dex clarified. This specific research, the universal regenerative therapy, is designed to work on any carbon-based life form. That includes the Vex'tar. So they're attacking because they're afraid of being healed. Diaz's voice dripped with sarcasm. Makes perfect sense. Or, Harlow said slowly, they're afraid of what else that technology could do. If you can rewrite cells to heal, you can rewrite them to harm. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. So they're conducting a preemptive strike, Quinn concluded. Trying to destroy research that could potentially be weaponized against them. Which is exactly why we need to secure it, Harlow stated firmly. If they're this afraid of it, it's definitely something we want to keep. Sir. Dex raised his hand like a schoolboy. I feel compelled to point out that using medical research as a weapon would violate approximately 14 different galactic treaties. I'm not talking about weaponizing it, mainframe, Harlow growled. I'm talking about making sure it reaches its intended purpose, saving lives. And if we happen to save human lives first, well, that's just prioritizing, Diaz added with a smirk. Exactly, Harlow nodded. Now, let's talk tactics. We'll split into 2 teams. Alpha team, that's me, Scalpel and Mainframe, will head for the research labs to secure the data. Beta team, Switchblade, Boom and Ghost, will make for the emergency shelters to extract survivors. What's our loadout? Rodriguez asked, already mentally inventorying her weapons. Standard combat gear, Harlow replied. But I want non-lethal options too. We don't know if the Vex'tar have hostages. Oh sure, Diaz rolled her eyes. The Angels of Death going in with stun guns, that'll be the day. We're still taking the heavy artillery, Harlow assured her. But I want options. This isn't a standard smash and grab. Speaking of which, Quinn interjected, medical stations have their own security protocols. We might need medical clearance to access certain areas. Harlow smiled grimly. That's why we've got these. He held up a small device. Command codes. Admiral Chen pulled some strings. These should get us through any locked doors, unless the Vex'tar have already bypassed the security systems, Dex pointed out. Then we do what we do best. Harlow said, his smile turning predatory. We improvise. The briefing continued for another hour, each angel memorizing their role and contingency plans. As they finally dispersed to prepare their gear, Diaz sidled up to Harlow. You know what I find funny about all this? What's that scalpel? For a bunch of professional killers, we sure seem to know a lot about medical facilities. Harlow's face remained impassive. Know your enemy, know your battlefield. Sure, Diaz nodded, unconvinced. And the fact that you just used the phrase cellular structures correctly in a sentence is totally normal for a guy whose call sign is Reaper. Harlow fixed her with a steely gaze. We've all got our secrets, Lieutenant. Focus on the mission. As Diaz walked away, she couldn't help but wonder what other surprises this mission might hold. The angels of death rushing to save healers was ironic enough, but something told her the real surprises were yet to come. Approaching Mercy's hand, Nikolai announced from the shuttle's cockpit, and it doesn't look merciful at all. Through the viewport, the angels could see the medical station listing in space, emergency lights flickering across its damaged hull. 3 Vex'tar ships hovered nearby like predatory insects, their organic mechanical hybrid designs unsettling to human eyes. They haven't spotted us yet, Nikolai said, his fingers dancing across the controls. Stealth systems holding. Harlow studied the tactical display. Those look like boarding crafts attached to the main airlocks. They're still here, still searching. Or still loading up prisoners and research, Quinn suggested grimly. Ghost, take us in through that maintenance dock. Harlow ordered. Nice and easy is my middle name, Nikolai replied, guiding the shuttle toward a small opening on the station's underside. I thought your middle name was Vladimirovich, Dex said, completely missing the idiom. Figure of speech mainframe. Diaz sighed. But seriously, Ghost, don't scratch the paint, I just had this armor polished. Everyone strap in, Nikolai warned. This is going to be tight. The shuttle slipped through the narrow maintenance dock with barely inches to spare on either side. A soft thunk indicated they'd made contact with the station. Pressure seal established, Nikolai reported. We're good to go. Harlow stood, checking his weapon one last time. Remember the plan. Alpha team with me to the research labs. Beta team, get those survivors. Comms check every 10 minutes. What if we run into Vex'tar? Rodriguez asked, hefting her massive plasma rifle. Standard procedure, Harlow replied coldly. They attacked healers, they get what's coming to them. The team nodded as the shuttle's door hissed open, revealing the dimly lit maintenance bay of Mercy's hand. Atmos thin but breathable, Dex reported, checking his scanner. Life support's running on emergency power. The Angels moved out, splitting into their designated teams at the first junction. Beta team headed toward the emergency shelters, while Harlow led Alpha team toward the central core, where the research labs were located. The corridors of the once pristine medical facility were now a chaotic mess of torn panels, flickering lights, and occasionally, dark stains that could only be blood. Signs of combat, Diaz noted, kneeling to examine a scorch mark on the wall, but not much. Looks like the staff didn't put up much of a fight. They're doctors, not soldiers, Dex replied. Still, Diaz frowned. You'd think they'd at least try to. She stopped abruptly as a sound echoed down the corridor. Something between a click and a chittering noise. Vex'tar, Harlow whispered, motioning for them to take cover. From around the corner emerged 2 Vex'tar warriors, their insectoid forms moving with an unsettling grace. They carried what looked like rifles, but with organic components pulsing along the barrels. Between them, they dragged a human in a blood-stained lab coat. Harlow signaled silently. 3 fingers, 2, 1. Alpha team burst from cover, weapons raised. The Vex'tar reacted with surprising speed, but not fast enough. Diaz's precision shot took the first one in what passed for its head, while Harlow's plasma burst caught the second in its thorax. They dropped without firing a shot. Nice work, Harlow said, moving toward the fallen human. To their surprise, the person in the lab coat was conscious. A middle-aged man with a nasty gash on his forehead looked up at them with wide eyes. Military, he asked weakly. About time, Doctor. Harlow helped the man to a sitting position. Kapoor, Dr. Vikas Kapoor, head of xenobiology. He winced, touching his head wound. They came out of nowhere, started rounding up all the research staff. The patients, Diaz asked. Emergency shelters mostly, Kapoor replied. These things, he gestured to the fallen Vex'tar. They weren't interested in the patients, they wanted the research data. On the regenerative therapy, Dex supplied. Kapoor looked surprised. Yes. How did you know? Lucky guess, Harlow said smoothly. Can you walk, Doctor? We need to move. Kapoor struggled to his feet. I think so. Where are we going? First, you're going to tell us why the Vex'tar want your research so badly, Harlow said, his voice leaving no room for argument. Kapoor hesitated, then sighed. It's not what you think. They don't want to steal it. They want to destroy it. Called it, Dex muttered. But why? Diaz asked. It's medical research. Healing tech. Because, Kapoor explained, our breakthrough was adapting the therapy to work on Vex'tar physiology. The three angels exchanged glances. You were developing medicine, for the Vex'tar, Harlow asked slowly. For all species, Kapoor corrected. The universal aspect was the breakthrough, but yes, we were specifically testing it on Vex'tar tissue samples. Where did you even get? Diaz began, then shook her head. Never mind, I don't want to know. That still doesn't explain why they'd attack, Harlow pressed. Kapoor's face darkened. Because the Vex'tar society is based on natural selection. Their entire culture revolves around the idea that the strong survive and the weak perish. Our regenerative therapy would undermine their entire social structure. They attacked because you were trying to help them. Diaz's voice dripped with incredulity. From their perspective, we were threatening their way of life, Kapoor explained. Their religion teaches that suffering and death are necessary, that healing technology beyond basic field treatment is an abomination. So they attacked a medical station because they're what? Healthcare conservatives. Diaz snorted. It's more complicated than that. Kapoor said. The ruling caste, the Vex'tar primacy, maintains control through access to limited medical care. If our research became widely available, then the common Vex'tar wouldn't need the primacy anymore. Harlow finished, understanding dawning. This isn't about religion, it's about power. Exactly. Kapoor nodded. And there's more. We've had visitors. Vex'tar, who came seeking treatment in secret. Dissidents who don't share the primacy's views. So you've been treating enemy aliens on a human medical station. Harlow's voice was dangerously soft. They're not all enemies, Kapoor insisted. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There's a growing resistance movement among the Vex'tar. They want change. The conversation was cut short by Harlow's comm unit beeping. Alpha leader, he answered. Beta team here. Quinn's voice came through. We've reached the emergency shelters. Got about 60 survivors, mostly medical staff and ambulatory patients. But we've got a situation. Define situation, Harlow demanded. We've got Vex'tar here too. But, they're patients. Being treated by human doctors. Harlow looked at Kapoor, who had the grace to look embarrassed. I was getting to that part, the doctor said weakly. Beta team, hold position, Harlow ordered. We're on our way. He turned to Kapoor. You've got some explaining to do, doctor. I know how it looks, Kapoor said. But you have to understand, this could be the start of real peace between our species. Or, Diaz countered, it could be the biggest security breach in human history. Either way, Harlow said grimly, we need to get to those labs and secure that research. Now, as they moved deeper into the station, the signs of combat became more pronounced, but strangely, so did the signs of cooperation. In one room, they found human and Vex'tar blood mingled where they had clearly fought side by side against other Vex'tar. Looks like your theory about a Vex'tar civil war might have some merit, Harlow grudgingly admitted to Kapoor. It's not a civil war yet, the doctor replied. But it could be. And the question is, which side will humanity be on? Before Harlow could respond, a massive explosion shook the station, sending them all staggering against the walls. What was that? Diaz demanded. Dex checked his scanner. The Vex'tar ships are firing on the station. They're targeting the research labs. They're going to destroy the whole station, Kapoor realized in horror. They'd rather kill their own people than let this research escape. Harlow's face hardened into a mask of determination. Not on my watch. Angels of death don't let healers die, no matter what species they are. Another blast rocked the station, sending ceiling panels crashing down around them. They're getting more accurate, Dex warned, his neural implant flickering rapidly as he processed incoming data. 3 more hits like that and the structural integrity of the research section will fail. Beta team, status report. Harlow barked into his comm. We've consolidated all survivors in emergency shelter 2. Quinn's voice came back, punctuated by static, including 17 Vex'tar civilians. The medical staff refuses to leave them behind. Of course they do, Diaz muttered. Because why make our job easier? Hold position, Harlow ordered. We're heading to the research labs to secure the data, then we'll figure out an extraction plan. Extraction might be challenging, Nikolai cut in. I'm monitoring the Vex'tar ships. They've deployed fighters to patrol the exterior. Our shuttle won't make it past them undetected. One problem at a time, Harlow replied. First, the research. They moved through the corridors at a rapid clip, with Dr. Kapoor struggling to keep up. As they approached the central research lab, the damage became more severe. Entire sections of wall had been blown away, and the artificial gravity fluctuated ominously. The main lab is just ahead, Kapoor panted, pointing to a set of reinforced doors at the end of the corridor. Those doors look intact, Diaz observed. Too intact, compared to everything else around here. Trap? Harlow asked. Definitely a trap, Diaz confirmed. Dex scanned the area. 6 Vex'tar life signs inside the lab. They've barricaded themselves in. They must have the research data, Kapoor said. Or they're trying to destroy it. Harlow considered their options. We need a distraction. I might have an idea, Dex said hesitantly. But it's a bit unorthodox. We're the Angels of Death, Diaz smirked. Unorthodox is our middle name. I thought our middle name was a Buth, Dex replied, missing the joke again. The plan, mainframe, Harlow growled. Right. Well, this is a medical station, and that, he pointed to a nearby door labeled pharmaceutical storage, should have everything we need. 10 minutes later, Diaz stood at the entrance to an air duct, holding what looked like a modified medical nebulizer attached to a canister. This is the stupidest plan ever, she complained. I feel like I'm in a bad action movie. The aerosolized sedative will disperse through the lab's ventilation system in approximately 30 seconds, Dex explained. The dosage is calibrated for Vex'tar physiology. And you know this how? Diaz asked suspiciously. I read the manual, Dex replied, innocently, tapping his neural implant. What manual? The one labeled Xenobiological Pharmaceutical References in the database. It was quite fascinating actually. Did you know that Vex'tar have 3 separate respiratory? Spare us the biology lesson. Harlow cut him off. Everyone, masks on. They donned emergency breathing masks from their gear, as Diaz activated the nebulizer, and sent it crawling through the air duct on small motorized wheels. Another of Dex's quick modifications. Now we wait, Harlow said. Exactly 47 seconds later, Dex was counting. A series of thuds came from inside the lab. That would be our friends taking an unscheduled nap. Diaz grinned beneath her mask. Mainframe, override the door, Harlow ordered. Dex connected to the door's security panel with a cable from his neural implant. And, we're in. The reinforced doors slid open to reveal 6 Vex'tar warriors sprawled unconscious on the floor. Each wore distinctive armor with glowing red insignia, different from the ones they had encountered earlier. Primacy enforcers. Kapoor identified them. Elite troops. They were trying to destroy this, Diaz said, pointing to a central data core still humming with power. Looks like they were interrupted before they could finish the job. The data's still intact, Kapoor asked hopefully. Dex connected to the system. Yes, but it's being systematically wiped. I can stop the process, but another explosion rocked the station. This one close enough to knock them all off balance. Structural integrity at 42%, and falling, the station's AI announced in a disturbingly calm voice. Catastrophic failure imminent. We need to go, Harlow decided. Mainframe, download what you can, and rig the rest to purge. If we can't have this research, neither can the Vex'tar primacy. Wait, Kapoor protested. That research could save millions of lives, and if it falls into the wrong hands, it could cost billions, Harlow countered. Make the call, doctor. Your life's work or your principles. Kapoor hesitated, then his shoulders slumped. You're right. Download what you can, destroy the rest. While Dex worked on the data, Harlow contacted Beta Team. Switchblade, we need an extraction plan.
Working on it, Quinn replied. The Vex'tar have the main docking bays covered, but I've been studying the station's schematics. There's a medical shuttle bay on Deck 6. It's designed for emergency evacuations. Will it hold everyone? Harlow asked. If we pack them in like sardines, maybe. Another voice cut in. Dr. Elaine Porter, whom they had rescued from the emergency shelter. The medical shuttles have stasis units for critical patients. We could use those to maximize space. For the Vex'tar too, Harlow asked pointedly. There was a pause before Porter replied firmly. For all patients, Commander. Harlow exchanged looks with Diaz, who shrugged. Your call, Reaper. After a moment, Harlow nodded. Fine, Beta Team, start moving everyone to the medical shuttle bay. We'll meet you there with the research data. That's going to be a problem, Nikolai's voice cut in. The Vex'tar ships are repositioning. They're going to have a clear shot at anything leaving the shuttle bay. Then we need a distraction, Harlow said. Something to keep those ships busy while the medical shuttle escapes. I've got an idea, Rodriguez chimed in, her voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone about to suggest something explosive. The station's medical imaging systems use focused radiation, right? If we overload them and direct the beam at the Vex'tar ships, you want to turn an MRI into a weapon? Kapoor asked, aghast. Technically it would be more like turning a radiotherapy device into a directional EMP, Dex corrected. And it could work. The medical systems have their own power reserves. Do it, Harlow ordered. Boom, Ghost. Make it happen. Switchblade. Get everyone ready to move. What about us? Diaz asked. Harlow's expression was grim. We need to make sure that medical shuttle gets away clean, which means someone needs to stay behind and manually target those Vex'tar ships. Suicide mission, Diaz said flatly. Pretty much, Harlow agreed. I volunteer. Kapoor stepped forward. This is my research. My responsibility. No offense, Doc, but you don't have the training, Harlow said. I'll do it. We'll do it, Diaz corrected. Angels fly together, remember? Actually, Dex interjected. Nobody has to stay behind. I can rig an automated targeting system. It won't be as accurate, but it should create enough chaos for the medical shuttle to escape. And what about us? How do we get out? Harlow asked. Dex grinned. Remember our shuttle, it has stealth systems. In all the confusion, we slip away unnoticed. Harlow finished, clapping Dex on the shoulder. Mainframe, sometimes you're not as annoying as I pretend you are. Thank you, sir, Dex beamed. I think. The plan came together with military precision. Beta Team prepared the survivors for evacuation while Alpha Team rigged the station's medical equipment for their unconventional purpose, using surgical lasers, radiotherapy machines, and even diagnostic scanners. They assembled an improvised defensive system. As they worked, another group of Vex'tar boarded the station, but these wore different insignia, blue instead of red. The resistance, Kapoor explained. They must have heard about the attack. To everyone's surprise, the blue-marked Vex'tar didn't attack. Instead, their leader approached Harlow directly. You are military? The Vex'tar asked in halting English. Angels of Death, Harlow confirmed. Weapon at the ready but not aimed. The Vex'tar made a strange chittering sound that might have been laughter. Ironic. We are called life-bringers, among our kind. The primacy named us heretics for seeking healing technology. You're here for the research, Harlow guessed. We are here for our kin, the Vex'tar corrected. The patients. But yes, the research would help our cause. Harlow studied the alien, then made a decision. Help us get everyone out of here, and we'll talk about the research. The Vex'tar extended a limb in what appeared to be a gesture of agreement. We have ships, small, but they can help evacuate. Sir, Dex whispered urgently. Are we really going to trust them? Harlow looked around at the wounded humans, and Vex'tar being treated side by exhausted medical staff who made no distinction between species. Today we are, he decided. Today we're all healers. With the Resistance Vex'tar's help, the evacuation plan expanded. As the station creaked and groaned around them, humans and Vex'tar worked together to prepare for escape. Rodriguez put the finishing touches on their makeshift defense system. Ready to light this candle, Commander. On my mark, Harlow said, watching as the last of the patients were loaded into the combined fleet of shuttles. 3, 2, 1, mark. The station's medical equipment, never designed for such application, hummed to life. Focused beams of various radiation types shot outward, striking the primacy ships. Alarms blared as targeting systems went haywire and engines sputtered. Now, Harlow shouted into his comm. All shuttles go. The medical shuttles, along with the small Vex'tar resistance vessels, burst from the station's bays, speeding away from the crippled primacy ships. Our turn, Harlow told his team. Back to our shuttle. As they raced through the deteriorating station, Diaz glanced at Harlow. You know what I find really ironic about all this? What's that scalpel? The Angels of Death just performed the biggest rescue operation in history, using medical equipment as weapons. Harlow allowed himself a rare smile. Sometimes, Lieutenant, the best way to save a life is to think like someone who takes them. Behind them, the station's remaining systems finally gave way. But by then, the Angels of Death, and everyone they had come to save, were already speeding toward safety. 1 week later, aboard the ETS Harbinger, Commander Jack Harlow stood at rigid attention before Admiral Chen's holographic projection. The official report states that you not only rescued the human medical personnel and patients from Mercy's hand, but also 17 Vex'tar civilians, and subsequently formed an alliance with Vex'tar resistance fighters, Chen said, her expression unreadable. Care to explain that last part, Commander? It seemed like the tactically sound decision at the time, Admiral, Harlow replied stiffly. Chen's eyebrow raised a fraction. Tactically sound to ally with the same species that attacked the station in the first place. Different factions, ma'am. The Vex'tar are not a monolith. So I've been learning, Chen sighed. Dr. Kapoor has been quite educational in his debriefings. Harlow remained silent, waiting. The Joint Chiefs are divided, Chen continued. Half want to pursue this potential alliance with the Vex'tar resistance. The other half want to launch a retaliatory strike against the primacy. And your opinion, ma'am? I'm inclined to give diplomacy a chance, Chen admitted. But only because your actions have given us a unique opportunity. The Vex'tar resistance has offered to share their own medical technology in exchange for the regenerative research. A fair trade, Harlow nodded. Indeed. But that's not why I called you here. Chen's expression softened slightly. There's something else in your report that caught my attention. You mentioned that your team was unusually knowledgeable about medical procedures and equipment. Harlow's face remained impassive. We're a versatile unit, Admiral. Cut the crap, Harlow, Chen said bluntly. I know what the Angels of Death really are. I know about Project Valkyrie. Harlow's composure slipped for just a moment. With all due respect, Admiral, the combat medic program, Chen continued, ignoring his interruption. Elite medical personnel trained in advanced combat techniques, meant to be deployed to the most dangerous battlefields to extract and treat the wounded. That program was classified, Harlow said carefully. Still is, Chen agreed, which is why officially you're the Angels of Death, a spec-ops team with a fearsome reputation. It's much better for deterrence than really aggressive doctors. Despite himself, Harlow's lips twitched. Our combat skills are not exaggerated, Admiral. No, but your medical training is deliberately omitted from public records, Chen replied. Lieutenant Diaz was a neurosurgeon before joining. Specialist Okoro has dual PhDs in xenobiology and pharmacology, and you, Commander, were Chief of Trauma Surgery at New Geneva Military Hospital. And now we're soldiers, Harlow said flatly. You're both, Chen corrected, which is why you were the perfect team for this mission. I needed people who could fight like devils but think like healers. Harlow allowed himself a small smile. It did come in handy. Using the station's medical equipment as weapons was creative. That's putting it mildly, Chen chuckled. Turning radiotherapy machines into directed EMP emitters, aerosolizing sedatives through the ventilation system. That's not standard spec-ops thinking. The best tool is the one available to you, Harlow quoted. A lesson the Vex'tar learned the hard way. Chen agreed. But here's where it gets interesting. The Vex'tar resistance wants to establish a joint medical research facility, and they specifically requested the Angels of Death as security. Harlow blinked in genuine surprise. Us? Why? Because somehow they figured out what you really are, Chen said. Their leader, the one who called them life-bringers. He told Dr. Porter that he recognized a fellow healer in you. That's unexpected. Is it? Chen asked. You saved their wounded. You used medical equipment instead of just blasting your way through. And according to Dr. Porter, you even personally treated a Vex'tar with a severe thoracic injury during the evacuation. Harlow shrugged uncomfortably. Field medicine. Nothing special. To them it was, Chen said. Especially since Vex'tar anatomy is notoriously complex. The fact that you knew how to treat a pneumothorax in a species with 3 respiratory chambers impressed them greatly. So what happens now? Harlow asked, eager to change the subject. Now, Chen said, the Angels of Death get a new mission. You'll be escorting Dr. Porter and a team of researchers to the new joint facility. Officially, you're there as security. Unofficially, we'll be contributing to the research. Harlow finished. Exactly, Chen nodded. This could be the beginning of a new era in human Vex'tar relations. And it all started because the primacy made the mistake of attacking our healers. And we sent the Angels of Death, Harlow added with a wry smile, who turned out to be the perfect ambassadors. Chen concluded. Sometimes irony works in our favor. After the debriefing, Harlow found his team in the Harbinger's mess hall. They fell silent as he approached. So, Diaz asked, are we being court-martialed for making friends with the enemy? Not exactly, Harlow replied, taking a seat. We're being reassigned. Let me guess, Rodriguez said. Back to hunting pirates in the Outer Rim? No, Harlow shook his head. We're going to be guarding a joint human Vex'tar medical research facility.
The table fell silent as his words sank in. You're kidding, Diaz finally said. I'm not, Harlow assured her. The Vex'tar resistance specifically requested us. Because they figured out what we really are, Dex realized. Harlow nodded. They recognized fellow healers. Healers who can kick ass when necessary. Quinn added with a grin. So our cover is blown? Nikolai asked. Only to the Vex'tar, Harlow said. To the rest of the galaxy, we're still the Angels of Death. Angels of Death guarding a hospital. Rodriguez laughed. That's rich. Not guarding, Harlow corrected. Participating. Chen wants us to contribute our medical expertise. Back to our roots, Diaz mused. You know I haven't performed surgery in 3 years. I might be rusty. Somehow I doubt that, Harlow said. You've kept your skills sharp enough to perform field amputations during firefights. Not the same as microsurgery, she countered. You'll manage, Harlow assured her. We all will. Dex raised his glass of synthetic juice. To the Angels of Death, the galaxy's most overqualified combat medics. And to the Vex'tar, Harlow added, raising his own glass, for teaching us that sometimes, the best way to end a war is to heal your enemy. As they clinked glasses, Dr. Elaine Porter approached their table. She still had a bandage on her forehead, but otherwise looked recovered from her ordeal. Commander Harlow, she said, I wanted to thank you personally, not just for the rescue, but for saving my patient. Patient? Harlow asked. The Vex'tar with the thoracic injury. Porter clarified. He told me that a human soldier treated him, used a medical scanner like he was born with it in his hands. He said. Harlow shrugged. Just doing my job, doctor. That's just it. Porter smiled knowingly. I checked the records. Before joining the military, you wrote the definitive paper on comparative xeno or thoracic trauma care. You weren't just doing your job as a soldier, you were doing your job as a doctor. Harlow glanced at his team, who were all suddenly very interested in their food. Is there a question in there, Dr. Porter? He asked. Just an observation, she replied. I find it interesting that when Earth's healers were attacked, they sent more healers to the rescue. Healers with guns, yes, but healers nonetheless. The Angels of Death, Diaz supplied helpfully. Yes, Porter nodded. Though I suspect there's more to that name than meets the eye. After all, in many cultures, angels are seen as messengers, guardians, and healers, not just harbingers of death. With that she walked away, leaving Harlow and his team in thoughtful silence. She's got us pegged, Quinn finally said. Does it matter? Harlow asked. We did our job, we saved lives, both human and Vex'tar, and now we get to keep doing it, Dex added. Just with fewer explosions. Probably. I wouldn't count on that, Diaz smirked. Trouble seems to find us, or we find it, Rodriguez corrected. Either way, Harlow said. We'll be ready, because that's what the Angels of Death do. We heal when we can, fight when we must, and never ever give up on a patient, no matter what species they are. Humanity, fuck yeah, Diaz whispered with a grin. Harlow couldn't help but smile back. Humanity, fuck yeah indeed.